Lost roads go.
Hello, fellow treasure hunters. This is Greg with Lost Roads Gold again today. You notice I got my treasure hunting shirt on, the Moon Lake Gathering treasure hunting shirt. This year we have the Moon Lake Gathering is planned for August 13th, 14th, and 15th at the Duchesne Event Center in Duchesne. So if you plan on coming to that, that's the date. So get the time off and do whatever you need to do to get there, because it's going to be a lot of fun. We got some good things planned, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So what I wanted to talk about today was that I was reading in Footprints in the Wilderness when that first. This is the second edition, but when the first edition came out, my dad got one, and I was really enthralled reading it. And I was reading through it and found this picture. You probably all know who Gale Rhoades is, but he wrote several books. He wrote this one, Footprints in the Wilderness, with Carrie Boren, and then later he wrote this one, Lost in the Uintas, and some other books. But I was reading this Footprints in the Wilderness and saw this picture, and it just says Reed Powell, who's on the left, and Jim Nebeker pose in an old cabin in Dry Fork Canyon, and Gale was there. He's the one that took that picture. That's all that was in the book about it, and I always wondered where that would be in Dry Fork Canyon. And there was also one other picture, this one here with the cross on it. It says Spanish cross or trail marker carved deep into an old pine tree in Dry Fork Canyon. So those really piqued my interest. I was living in Vernal at the time. I was close, but there was just nothing said in the book about it. Then later, The Lost Gold of the Uinta came out, and I was reading in it, and there was a story, a little 3 paragraphs that talk about that picture. And it says, in 1980, about 1/4 mile south and a little west of Horseshoe Park, Jim Nebeker, Ford Larson, Reed Powell, and I discovered an old camp in a large clearing near 5 or 6 small ponds. There were 2 very old cabins, a rock smelter, parts of an old windlass, and several piles of smeltered slag. About 1,000 feet to the east of these, out on the lip of a ridge, we discovered a pit-like prospect hole and about 5 feet deep and 6 to 7 feet wide, inside of which was found the head of an old hammer. Also, upon the lip of this same ridge, a short distance northwest of the prospect hole, we came upon a large pine tree marked with a Latin cross, which was about 18 or 20 inches long and about 5 feet up from the base of the tree. Under the cross was carved either a square or a circle. It was difficult to determine which. A square would indicate buried treasure or 90 degrees, while a circle could mean a mine, cave, or knoll. This tree with its symbols stood out on the very edge of a 12 to 15 foot high ledge. Therefore, the base of the ledge was searched for any evidence of a mine or a cave, but neither was found. We never had a metal detector with us, so we could not scan the area to determine whether or not there might have been a buried cache. Southeast of these old cabins, in a draw which empties into Dry Fork Canyon, we traced the ruins of an old trail or wagon road, which oftentimes had been rocked up along its sidewalls to prevent the trail or road from slipping into the bottom of the draw. This pathway was very old. Moss had grown up on the rocks, and trees had grown up through the center of the path. So I read that, and I remembered the picture from Footprints in the Wilderness. I put 2 and 2 together and figured they're the same, but now I had a location, a general location. So this was probably in the late 1980s. Gale says they found this in 1980, but it was about 1 1/4 mile south and a little west of Horseshoe Park. I knew where Horseshoe Park was. So one day, me and one of my brothers, I don't remember if it was Tracy or Jared, but I think it was Jared, we hiked in there into that general area, and we hiked around until we stumbled upon these cabins, and we were just flabbergasted. We had actually found the cabin, and it matched the picture that was in the book. And we got to looking around there, and there was the cabins, there was the smelter, the rocks stacked up like a smelter. There was everything there, and we couldn't believe this. We were just barely getting started in our treasure hunting days back then, and so this was exciting for us. Gale said that this was an old Spanish camp, and we hiked in following his sparse directions, and we found it. And we were excited. So we took some pictures, and we started looking around, and we come in from the north side, I think it was, and worked our way down. We saw the cabins and the rock smelter. So we were walking around taking pictures of everything and looking at everything. And here's what it looked like when we got there. This is one of the cabins. I think this is the one in the picture. That's what it looked like in the late, this is probably just not too many years after Gale and his buddies found it. So that's one of the pictures. Here's another one of the pictures of one of the cabins. You can see the roofs all caved in on them. They look pretty old, especially this one here. Looks like it was two cabins side by side sharing a middle wall, but it's really dilapidated, fallen down. And so we were excited walking around taking pictures of all these. We came across that what Gale says was the old smelter, and we just couldn't believe, oh my goodness, there's an old smelter. Sure enough, there was, look, there'd been a fire in there. And so we got to taking pictures of all these. And I come around a corner on one of the cabins, and here was this plaque. And obviously it wasn't there when Gale and his buddies were there, or they would have known what this was. But it turns out it's the Dry Fork Flume Mill. Now, I'll explain what the Dry Fork Flume is here in a minute, but this plaque showed up, and we knew about the mill and the flume and all that, but didn't know where it was. And then all of a sudden we figure out this is not a Spanish camp at all. It is the Flume Mill. So we were disappointed and discouraged, and just thought, man, how could Gale, did he really think this was, I don't know, did he really think it was a Spanish camp? Or is he just putting this in there to write a book? I do believe he thought it was, and I could see how he could, because that old saying, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I've done this myself, and I know a lot of other people do too. But if you are a Spanish treasure hunter or Lost Roads mine treasure hunter, when you're out there in the wilderness and you come across something like this, everything looks like a Spanish treasure or a Lost Roads gold mine or whatever you're looking for. So I could see how that can happen. Like I said, I've done it myself. So anyways, long story short, if you go out there chasing this story, I just wanted to put this out there so that nobody else would go out thinking there's an old Spanish camp out there. That it's the Dry Fork Flume Mill, and it is there, and it is cool to see. So let me explain what it is and how to get there. You can go there and see it. They encourage it. There's a trail that takes you nearby. And you can see some of the things, the old parts of the flume that are still there. I don't know if they're still there today. I would imagine they probably crumbled down a lot, but I'll show you pictures of the way they looked when we saw them. This was probably 30, 20, almost 30 years ago when we saw some of this stuff. And late 1980s when we found this mill. I don't know what it looks like today. Haven't been there for a while, but so the best way to explain it is there's a newspaper article that came out about it, and it's kind of a long article, but I'll just read you the most important part here. So it says, the route of Dry Fork Creek was plagued with many sinkholes in the underlying limestone formation. After the high water runoff, the creek became dry. So after the high water runoff in the spring, the creek became dry, usually in late July or August. This left the farmers without water and their crops dying before harvest. In 1887 or 1888, they attempted to dig a ditch around the largest sinkhole, only to have the water disappear down the next hole. Dan Adams, Henry Hall, and others tried to catch the fish in the ditch, but they went into the sinkhole. The water users of Dry Fork and Ashley Valley formed a company and decided that a wooden flume around the sink areas would solve the problem. In 1893, they bought a sawmill to make lumber to construct the flume. Dave Bingham, Frank Watkins, Bill Gilman, and others built the road to the mill site north of the flume. So this road is what Gale said. Southeast of these old cabins, in a draw which empties into Dry Fork Canyon, we trace the ruins of an old trail or wagon road, which was often rocked up along its sidewalls to prevent it from caving off. So here's Gale thinking this trail that he's found was an old Spanish trail that went to this Spanish camp, but actually it's just the road to the flume. Let's see. It was a laborious job with just a crude scraper and horse shovels and picks. Odie Allen and Jim Griffin moved the mill up to the site. Ty Nickel and his son Milt were the timber choppers. Dave Gingham, supervisor. Jim Griffin was sawyer. Billy Gilman, engineer. Jack Gilstrom, ratchet setter. Frank Watkins, off-bearer. Ernest Eaton piled the lumber. Dan Adams piled the slabs and disposed of waste materials. And Kathleen Gilman cooked for the crew and had as helper Susan Isabel McCown. In the fall of 1895, Dan Adams and Charlie Searle hauled the lumber on sleighs down to the flume site. The following spring, some of the stockholders of the company began construction of the flume. It leaked so badly that the dirt supporting the trestles was washed away and the trestles gave way and toppled over. Not giving up, they made square supports of stacked logs which stood up well, but the flume still leaked too much. They probably used green rough sawn boards that didn't swell enough to stop the leaking. Some of these long supports are still located along the flume route. The company continued to saw lumber at the mill through the summer to raise money for the project, but they were unsuccessful. They later made a deal with Lycurgus Johnson to divert water below the sinks, but this effort also failed. And then they goes on to say how they gave up. It just wasn't working for them. So the trail, Gale's trail, is the road to the flume mill, and the pile of rocks that he thought was the smelter was actually, and it says this on the plaque, that pile of rocks was the chimney for the camp cook tent. So it wasn't, all this wasn't anything to do with the Spanish at all, but I can see how, if that's what you're looking for, I can see how you would see that. Now you can go up and see all this stuff. There's a trail. Oh, let me show you. Here's a picture of the flume as they were building it. So this is a picture as it looked at the time, this is probably right, when they got done, it was leaking badly. Here are the supports, the square supports that they built after this is their second attempt. And you can still, I guess, to this day, still see those. Again, they were there in the late 1980s, early 1990s when I saw them. But here's one, and you might have to get off the trail to see some of these. But these two, looks like the trail is going right past them there. So those should be right on the trail. And then here's some more as it come up out of the bottom of the canyon, going across the sagebrush flat. This is a map of the Flume Trail. If you want to go see this, the county has made a trail, and it starts in Dry Fork, and you see at the bottom right corner of this map, there's these little circles with TH. There's 4 of them. So the first one is at the bottom right corner of the map, and that's the start of it, and you can hike all the way along that. But the stuff that's in these pictures, the trestles and things that might still be there today, they don't start till I would recommend, if you just want to see that stuff, go to the last trailhead marker. It's clear up, it's at the end of the road. The road ends right there. And incidentally, if you want to see a cave, Massey's Cave is right there above where the road ends. It's not marked, I don't think, but you'll see a well-worn trail that goes up to it right there where the road ends. But if you take off and go across the creek and there's a bridge there, you'll get on that trail. And then you'll see how it goes up and just makes a big circle there at the end of the trail. Well, look on the map, clear up at the top left corner, you'll see there's a blue dot up there, and it says area of the mill. And that trail, so the blue trail is well worn. It's easy to see. You can find that one easily, and hopefully you can see some of these things along that trail. Hopefully they're still there. I imagine they still are. But to get to the Flume Mill, you've got to go past the end of the trail, and that trail probably isn't really well worn. It might be hard to see in spots, but you can see it at the end of that blue loop. You see the dotted line take off and lead up to the mill. So you can go that way, or you see that road, come back to the last trailhead marker, and then just above it, just to the right of it, there's a road that takes off and goes north and then swings around to the west. And along that trail there, just east of the blue dot where the mill is, you got to look careful, but there's a trail that takes off from that road. And it's not marked, but you just have to watch for the trail. And it's just an old cattle trail that the cattle ranchers use to drive their cows in and out. But you can follow that trail, and it takes you over to that area too. So and it's a shorter walk, not as much up and down. You'll see in this next map that there is, from the end of that blue trail where it circles back around, you see that trail, and it is kind of an uphill slog up to the mill from there. So, but you can go that way. And if you're on the trail looking for those other those stands that the Flume was on, you might just want to keep on going up that way. But so again, I just wanted to point out that this is not an old Spanish camp. That Gale was just mistaken. And if you're going to look for that, following the clues in his book, I just want to let you know that you're going to find the old Flume Mill, not a Spanish camp. just to let you know. But it is worth a hike. It is pretty cool to see. It's some neat history, and the trail is, you'll see some cool stuff along the trail. If you do want to go see the sinks, go back to the trailhead and walk just up the bottom of the creek bed. It'll if you come in middle, like July or later, it's going to be dry. The runoff will be over, and the creek bed will be dry, but just keep walking up that creek. There is a trail that goes up alongside the creek, and it's a pretty well-worn trail too. And you can just follow that trail if you want, and then you get up there a ways, and then eventually you'll see water, and then hike down to the creek and just follow it down. You can see where it's just sinking into the rocks and disappears. So you can see what they were up against and why they wanted to do this flume. So it's an interesting hike. It's a lot of fun. I recommend you do it, but it's got nothing to do with Spanish if that's what you're looking for. I just wanted to put that out there. So again, Moon Lake Gathering, August 13th through the 15th in Duchesne at the Centennial Event Center. It's going to be a lot of fun again. Lots of people, and you get to meet a lot of fellow treasure hunters, and I recommend you get the plan to come to that and get the time off. So with that, we'll let you go.
You're too close to the goal.